Welcome back to Beyond the 529. Today I'm going to cover 3 tips for you to remember when considering test-optional colleges. These 3 tips can have a huge impact on your students' opportunity for admissions, financial aid, and overall how much you're going to end up paying for college. I'm Mike Bink, founder and president of Equivest Financial Advisors. Equivest is an independent wealth management firm that specializes in college planning for high school families. I work with families throughout the country to navigate the college funding process so they can save thousands on the cost of college, minimize their student loans, and protect their family's retirement. Please make sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel below for more tips and videos to help you master the college funding process and save thousands on your students' education. So what does it mean to be test optional for a college or a university? Simply put, test optional means that it's no longer mandatory to submit test scores as part of the school's application process. Many schools in today's day and age, especially with the impact of COVID-19, have gone to being test optional, mainly because they know that it's going to be much more difficult for students to be able to take the tests like they normally would. And so they've done that to, in a way, help with applications, to make sure students are still applying, but then also to make it a little bit easier on the students to get that application process submitted. Whether a school is test optional or not, they will accept your test scores. Test optional simply means that it's no longer mandatory to submit them. One thing to keep in mind as well is that there's a difference between a test optional school and a test flexible school. Test flexible schools, usually the ones that are a little bit more competitive academically, are oftentimes going to require at least one piece of testing evidence. That piece of evidence could be a subject matter test from, say, the ACT or the SAT, or it could be an AP test that your student took. But test flexible and test optional are different things, and it's very important to know the difference, particularly with the school list that you've built and the schools that your student is interested in. Always important to understand, and you'll always hear me say in these videos, that every school is created a little bit differently and they all have their own sets of requirements. So when all else fails, you always want to make sure that you check with your particular school to understand what their requirements are. So tip number 1 for test optional colleges is to make sure that you use that test optional status to your advantage. A test optional status at a school can expand your application options. So schools that may have never been on your radar before, or that may have been outside of your students' purview from an academic standpoint based due to the test scores, now might be in play. So that's something that you would want to consider, is whether or not you want to expand your school list to those schools that you otherwise might not have considered. If your student has excellent scores, then it goes without saying that you want to get those submitted no matter what. Especially anytime that your student's scores fall within that top tier or top 50% at a particular school, you absolutely want to make sure that those get submitted, because that's only going to help your student. It's not going to hurt them. Tip number 2 is don't let the test optional status at schools hurt your students' chances. If your student's grades and the rest of their profile is strong, but their tests are on the weaker side, don't submit your scores. Right? Submitting your scores in that scenario is only going to be another piece of evidence to the negative that a school can potentially look at to hurt you from both an academic and admission standpoint, but also from a financial aid standpoint. Don't submit any test scores that fall below 50% at your schools of interest. So the opposite of point number 1. The last tip when it comes to test optional colleges that we're going to cover today is not to forget about the financial aid impact. Most schools will not offer any merit aid without a student submitting their test scores. So merit aid, again, is the type of financial aid that a student is going to receive for their academic merit and their academic performance coming into school. So check out my other videos to understand the difference between need-based aid and merit-based aid. You can take advantage of a test optional school from an admissions standpoint, but keep in mind that you don't want it to hurt you from a financial aid standpoint. So if your student is an excellent student and they've got a very good chance of merit aid, it's not in your best interests to not submit your test scores, because that can cost thousands and thousands of dollars against you and of merit aid that otherwise would have been offered by the university. So the biggest factor to consider from a financial aid standpoint when it comes to being test optional is whether or not your student was a merit aid based student. And that's all going to come back to, again, your student's profile and where they line up with the particular universities that are on their list. Some of the test optional colleges you see here on the screen for 2020 and 2021, quite a few names. There's over 1,000 schools now that are test optional. Harvard, MIT, Wake Forest, these are excellent schools, high profile schools. Again, a lot of them have gone to test optional for the 2020 and 2021 school year in particular due to the COVID-19 impact. Now, whether or not a lot of these schools will start to revert back to not being test optional and requiring tests going forward once things have settled down following COVID-19 is yet to be seen. So we'll monitor that accordingly. For those families out there that your student is going to be applying to school and their freshman year is going to be 2020 and 2021, that's when you can really take advantage of this test optional status. If you or anyone you know of has applied to a test optional school, please let me know how it impacted your financial aid in the comments section below. Check out my other videos to learn the difference between need-based and merit-based aid, and tips for you to determine if your student is a need-based or merit-based aid candidate. If you like the information we shared today, please remember to like this video and subscribe to our channel below for more tips and videos to help you master the college funding process. And if you would like to learn more about how we can help you develop a plan to lower your family's cost of college, please click on the link in the description below. Thank you and good luck going beyond the 529.